Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome. My name is Carlos Mancada. I'm the Director of Client Services at InfoReady. Thanks for taking the time to join us for today's Peer Spotlight webinar with our guest panelists from the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota. Our panelists today, Elizabeth Fetty and Susan Fouch, they go by Liz and Sue respectively, will be sharing their best practices for managing funding opportunities and other programs and processes in the Research Development Office. Next slide, please. So they will be highlighting how they run seed grant programs and track the outcome and how they track the outcomes of these funding programs. So it's something that all of you are probably curious about and have probably struggled with at different times. So you'll get to hear from a couple voices here on how they do it. So next slide. Oh, here we go. Before getting started, let's discuss the schedule and logistics. So the webinar is scheduled for an hour, and the panelists are going to share their processes in a 15 to 20-minute presentation. And then the remainder of the time will be moderated Q&A. So a nice chunk of time there for Q&A and gaining some insights into how our panelists manage their processes. Now, for those of you who have colleagues that can attend the webinar, we're actually recording today's session, and we'll post the recording on our website the next week or so. Also, if you email us, we're glad to email you a link to the recording as well. Now, the phones are muted, and questions can be submitted via the chat option. So we'll moderate the Q&A via chat. Now, one last thing, don't forget to fill out the post-webinar survey. It'll pop up on screen after you close out of the webinar. Next slide. So at InfoReady, we provide tools to institutions to help them promote and manage opportunities and programs. So our solutions are pretty user-friendly, and they require minimal or no training, even for administrators. And if you do ever have questions, we have a top-notch support team. And anyone, a lot of you have experienced that, and if any of you haven't, you could ask some of the other institutions I work with, and it's one of the first things they'll tell you. And then even better, we have very quick turnaround on implementation, and it's measured in weeks, not months or years. The average implementation is actually between 3 to 4 weeks. I know because I work on those projects, so people are pretty happy about that. And then this will make everyone happy. It really does not require any ongoing support from your IT team. So you have access to do almost everything you need to. Now, in terms of what InfoReady Review does, InfoReady Review is a cloud-based system which allows everyone to work and collaborate in the same space. And the administrators can create opportunities and post them to a central location. Not only that, you can collect and review applications in one place, and you actually have a central dashboard there to have a top-level view of everything that's going on, including the review process and any other outcomes. You can also route materials for review and approval, so it's a pretty flexible tool to create workflow in the review and approval forms. And then in the system, you can also make the award decisions, communicate that out with people, track the outcomes via progress reports. I know our panelists today are going to be talking about that process of tracking outcomes. And then, of course, generate real-time reports about the competition, or even high-level metadata for analytics. Now here we've listed some of the ways institutions use InfoReady Review. Today we're focusing on how one research development office manages some of these processes, specifically seed grants. They'll also be talking about others, of course. And you can see there's quite a range of processes here. InfoReady Review and InfoReady really help you cut through the busy work related to these, such as you've probably had to print out applications before and pull in all of the material together. We handle that, among many other things. And then the next slide shows a broader list of programs and processes in a nice chart with bright colors, and you can see how your peers are using InfoReady Review in different ways. You know, the majority use it for internal funding opportunities, and then there's quite a few other types of processes as well. Now that we've covered the logistics and learned more about InfoReady, I'm happy to welcome our two panelists, Liz Fetty and Susan Fouch from Masonic Cancer Center, and turn the reins over to them. So Liz, Sue, it's all yours.
Great, thank you, Carlos. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is Liz, and I'm going to kind of introduce our office and how we are organized, and then I'm going to go ahead and let Sue take over for some more of the details regarding how we're using InfoReady. So we operate at the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota, and we're founded in 1991, and we were became an NCI designated comprehensive cancer center in 1998. So we've been through a lot over the last few years, and we're really excited about using InfoReady to help us with some of the processes that we use at our cancer center. We serve over 500 members, and we're really the hub for cancer research at the University of Minnesota. If you want to find out more about us, you can check out our website. So our Cancer Center also houses, we have a research development office within our Cancer Center. We have a nice team of staff that really work together to provide a number of services to our investigators. And these are both basic scientists and clinical researchers as well. So we do a lot of external proposal development. We run an internal grants program, which we'll highlight a lot today while we talk about InfoReady. We also have a science council that really helps us to direct our research directions at our university and within our Masonic Cancer Center. We use a peer review program to help researchers get some feedback on their grants and manuscripts before they send them out to reviewers. We have annual research symposium and other research engagement activities, such as research discussion forums. We also help to foster team science and faculty development. So a little bit of background for how we started using InfoReady. We implemented InfoReady in January of 2018, and we started out just as one microsite housed within our department. So this was not something that the universities, acquired and then worked down to all the different departments. This is kind of more of a grassroots approach where we saw a need for this within our own unit. And then since that time, we've actually expanded our license to three microsites, as people just word of mouth have been hearing what we've been doing and have really been excited about how we're using InfoReady within our internal unit. So as the interest in the interest in this has spread through the university, there's really been more talk about how we can start implementing this in other units and maybe make it eventually a university centrally based resource. At the moment, though, we're housing it at our own unit, but there's lots of people interested. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Sue and let her kind of give you some details about how we use InfoReady.
Hi, everybody. This is Sue here. I'll just talk a little bit about the scope of our pilot grant program and the things that we use InfoReady for, and then go through our competition cycle and give you some idea of how we're using InfoReady. Anyways, we again purchased InfoReady and set it up in January 2018. In the first year, we used it for one letter of intent. We had 40 proposals and 12 advanced to full competition. We had 15 competitions with 117 applications, 38 awards, and over $2.75 million in funding. And before InfoReady, we would have been doing this with a red cap application, and all of the reviews, award, and follow-up would have been done by email, shared drives, Excel spreadsheets, etc. So this has been great for us to have a system that can manage the entire process as well as collect information in a database. Next slide. Most of our grants, we run our pilot grants or seed grants, and we typically run a spring and fall cycles that have regular repeating competitions. So researchers are pretty familiar with that timeline and know what pilot grants will be coming up in each cycle. We also run individual pilot grant opportunities as needed, maybe 2 to 4 per year. And then we also have ongoing competitions for supplemental and other funding that are always open on our homepage. 2 that are, if you go to our homepage now, we have a Masonic Cancer Center Clinical and Translational Research Support Grant. We also have a Director's Junior Faculty Professional Travel Grant. The third item, Masonic Cancer Center Research Support, does not appear on the homepage. We actually have, we send the link as needed to investigators, and we typically are using this because we often, or our director often gets email requests for supplemental or bridge funding. And all of this had been happening and managed, again, in email. And so it was really hard to keep track of it. So we set up this research support application process to make it more formal and collect information and have it centrally available to people so we can track them. Next slide. Our competition cycle, very common to, I think, everyone. We have an application, we have routing and review steps, there's an award or not award decision, and then there's progress reports. And I'll be going through these in more detail. I just want to say, though, as Liz mentioned, we purchased InfoReady Review in January 2018, and we launched our spring cycle competitions in mid-February. And one thing I would point out is that you don't necessarily have to have the entire competition set up and ready to go before you launch. It might be easier if you take the time and think the whole process out, but we launched just the application in mid-February, and then we had 6 or 8 weeks to figure out the review process step, and then another 6 or 8 weeks to set up the award and post-award. So while it might have been easier to have this all set up and had one perfect template that we could then copy for all competitions, it can be done, and you can launch and do it in steps as you go along. Next slide. So the first step, of course, is the application. Most of our applications are pretty much the same, with additional questions that we ask as needed for a particular competition's need. We collect the principal investigators' demographic info, name, faculty, rank, academic department, their research program. If they have any co-investigators, we collect that. A title and abstract are always required. And then the rest are usually uploads. We do a research proposal, a budget, other funding sources, and bio sketches. And we provide templates for most of these on the competition site. So the applicants find it very easy to just download, fill in the template, and then upload it for their application. Occasionally we do letters of support, not often, but again, there is that feature in InfoReady that applicants can contact people to submit a letter. We have the internal grants manager always reviews them before the applications are accepted. So the two-step process where the applicant submits and then we accept it. And he or she is reviewing it for just completeness of information, and then proxy submission. I wanted to go a little bit about this again on the next slide, but it's something that I think I just discovered by happenstance. It's probably in the manual somewhere if I read it in detail, but I wanted to point it out and just explain it to people about submitting by proxy and making sure that people are submitting correctly. So if you want to go to the next slide. So InfoReady does have a nice feature where an applicant can have someone submit their application by proxy. So a pre-award person or an administrative person, project managers, whatever, can submit by proxy. But you do want to check when it's submitted that the proxy has submitted it correctly. And how I find it anyway, there might be an easier way, and maybe Carlos can talk about that a little bit later. But if you look on the application grid, and if you're using InfoReady, you're familiar with this. If you look on the application grid, you'll see the title and the applicant or the applicant's name. If you click on the application title, of course, you'll go right to the application and you see the PI's name, Robert Schumacher, all of that would be there correctly. But if you click on, in this case, Dr. Schumacher's hyperlink, it will actually take you to the proxy's user profile. And so if you look at that, you'll see that Craig Flory, who's the researcher, actually submitted it. And if I didn't print the whole screen, but if you looked further on Craig's profile, you would see the application there. And if you looked at Robert Schumacher's profile, you would not see the application. And I think this is really it's something to be aware of, and particularly because on the PI's user profile, you want to see all of their information. You want to see all their grants or all their applications, all their awards, etc., on their profile. So if you catch it before you've accepted it, you can actually return the application with instructions and say, please fix this. If you accept it, you can always, as an admin, correct it after the fact and then delete the other one. But I just wanted to point that out as something useful I learned along the way. Next slide. So after all the applications are accepted, the award period or the application period is closed, then next come routing steps in the review process. And we typically, this is pretty much how we review all of our applications or all of our competitions. Some have different variations, but for the most part, this is how we do all of them. They do have a feature, InfoReady does, for an applicant-driven routing step that we occasionally use as a first step. This, in particular, for one competition, we have a requirement. We have different research programs, and we only want one application from each program. And so this has happened actually in the past where we've had multiple people from a program submit, and then it causes some confusion and we have to send everything back. But by having, we require the applicant to submit their research group leader email, it routes to the group leader first, and then what we call is an endorsement. And so, so we only get one application from each program. But otherwise, we have the first step is usually individual reviews, and we use either a comments and ratings combination. We already had a standard review form, and so that was really easy to add to InfoReady. We have 7 questions, a place for the reviewers to put their comments, and then they give a score. Or some we just have a document upload if we have a really particular review form that we couldn't easily set up to InfoReady, and so we upload a template, the reviewer downloads it, and then uploads it back up into the system. We try to have 3 reviewers per application. For most of our competition, these are all internal faculty members from within the Cancer Center or most likely the Academic Health Center. Occasionally for some of our larger awards, we will have external reviewers, and it's really easy to add an external reviewer to the system, and we've used that for a couple of competitions, and they've found it very easy to use. Then after individual reviews, we'll have a study section, either a study section meeting. Liz, as part of the research development office, keeps a pool or list of study section people that we can call on to be reviewers. And actually, as part of the terms of award, when anyone receives an award from us, they are required to participate, and I don't remember the exact details, we can get them to you, but they are required to participate in a certain number of study sections over the next 3 years. So along with our senior leadership and scientific experts, all awardees also then participate as part of the study section. And typically they meet and they'll meet to discuss all the reviews and the applications, and then out of the study section will come a ranking. And having led one or assisted at 1 or 2 of these meetings, it was very easy. The members are all coming prepared with their laptops, and they quickly were able to navigate and see all the applications and provide comments. And it was just, the first one, I couldn't believe how smoothly it ran. Then after the study section, the leader of the competition will make a final recommendation, which then goes to the Masonic Cancer Center director, who makes the final award decision. And those last 2 steps are really, they're typically just approve, do not approve type of steps in InfoReady, and we just set terminology as appropriate for each step. Next. Then there's the award, not award decision. And for the most part, we send notification and reviewer comments right from InfoReady. It's really nice to have all the reviewer comments right there. And then depending on the competition, we might also send an award letter first and then follow up with InfoReady reviewer comments and the instructions for post-award. I think this is something that'll be in transition. The system, it's still new, and the first time people were more familiar with the letter process, and in some competitions, the leader is really, adamant that they want an award letter, but there's no reason why you can't do a letter and then follow up with the comments and instructions from InfoReady. Next slide. And then there's the progress reports, and I think at least one thing that I was most excited about having a system to help us manage that. Having done internal grants for the last 4 or 5 years, I think this was the most challenging part of the whole process, was trying to collect post-award progress reports, all that information that is so important and everyone's interested in. But I'll be the first to admit that I didn't do a very good job at it because it is so challenging. It's all done with emails and calendars and Excel spreadsheets, and then what do you do with the data and how do you collect it and organize it? So I was most excited about this part of the system. And so I put progress reports in quotes because I mean, that's the terminology for the InfoReady review system. But I like to really think about outside the box and use these reports for any data that you might want to collect and have available for the awardees, for the accountants, for grants administrators, for leadership, et cetera, because it can be more than just, quote unquote, a progress report. And so post-award period, I think of it in three time frames, and we'll go through these reports. There's the things that you need immediate post-award. And then there's the end of funding period reports, and then the return on investment reports. So this is really something that's happening over years, actually. So next slide. So here's a screenshot of our post-award reports. We typically have set up 13, which sounds like a lot, but 13 post-award reports, and I'll go through again in more detail about each of these. Next slide. So the immediate post-award reports, we typically have 4 different reports plus some uploads. And I did screenshots for some of these, and some of them I'll just go through questions because the screenshots just go through the forms because the forms get kind of lengthy and too hard to do a screenshot. But the first report is pretty self-explanatory: awardee, department, and accountant information. And so they tell us, what department will this account be homed in and who's their accountant. The second report was created by our finance manager and specific to her needs. And this is where we collect the account string information, the source of funds, some internal field specific to us, a journal entry, a date of transfer, those types of things. But that's where the accountants can go, both our accountant and the awardee's accountant can look at that and find, okay, this is the account string I'm supposed to use for the funds. The next one will be the acknowledgement text, and I'll show you a screenshot and the MCC internal data as well on the next slides. But then we also have uploads. We upload here the award letter, if there was one sent. All of our awardees are required to sign a terms of award, which we upload here, and that's where we cover the information about how they have to use the funds, what restrictions there might be, also that they're going to have to provide progress reports and return on investment. And there's also the paragraph, as I mentioned, about that they're going to have to participate in study sections over the next 3 years. And then upload the proposal routing form. That's an internal document for our accounting system. But we upload it all there. And then I guess next slide. Here's a screenshot that one of the reports that we provide text that they can use for an acknowledgement. Once we determine the source of funding, we put in this, again, brief statement that they can refer to. This is where the money came from, and please acknowledge the Cancer Center, and in this case, it was Minnesota Masonic Charities. But the vast majority of our funding is from philanthropic organizations, and so we want to be really sure that people give credit where credit is due. Next slide. This is another report that we use to collect internal data that we use for our Cancer Center report grant, our Cancer Center grant reporting, where our administrator just fills out, what type of research is this? Is it basic translational, clinical, or population science, and then to what MCC program does the science of the project belong. And we can use this for, again, for reporting to our support grant. Next slide. This is a screenshot of the post-award uploads. And one thing that I found was really nice, that I actually didn't realize until it really happened, is that all post-award uploads appear with the other application files on the application homepage. So it just collects all of these documents in one place that you can easily find. In this case, the first 5 or so files were uploaded with the application. There was a proposal, the references, the biosketches, other support and budget page, and then the last 3 files were actually uploaded post-award. So here's the letter of award, the terms of award, and the PRF. So you can just find all this information in one place instead of having it tucked away in folders on your server or Google Drive. Next slide. Then the next post-award period, I call the end of funding period reports. Most of our awards are for 1 year. We have a couple multi-year awards, but for the most part, it's 1 year. So at the end of the funding period, there are two reports that we have set up where they can submit for a no-cost extension if needed. And we require these if greater than 10% of the funds are remaining at the end of the award period. And they provide, they request a no-cost extension and then give us an interim progress report. What have you done to date? Why is there a delay? How much time is requested? And then we have a triage system within the department of, what to do with these requests. Otherwise, if they don't need a no-cost extension, they'll just submit a final progress report if it's a 1-year award. And if it's a multi-year award, we'll have 2 or 3 annual progress reports set up for them to fill out. They fill out 1 year, and they have to show progress before they'll get their 2nd year of funding, similar to an NIH grant. Next slide. Here are the questions that we'll ask on the annual or final report form. We provide text boxes as appropriate or multi-choice selections so people can easily fill out this form. And what's nice is it gives us then a consistent format to collect this data. We ask about any modifications to the original objectives or aims. We give them a text box to tell us about their study results. What are their future plans? We're hoping that they're going to submit for a grant, if there's any continued work, publications, etc. We have a place where they can indicate what Cancer Center shared resource services that they use. This is, again, really important for feedback for our Cancer Center support grant, so we can use this to show how our shared resources are being used. And then other documentation is optional, but if they want to upload some relevant document, a paper, an award, whatever they might want to do, if they want to do an upload, they can do so. And if it's multi-year, we'll start collecting return on investment data with the year 2 progress report. Next slide. So our return on investment, we typically do it for 7 years, similar to NIH for most of the competitions. Some of the smaller awards, we might just do a final report and that's all. But for our other awards, we'll try to do it for 7 years. The first question we ask that they can choose is either there's ongoing activity and we want them to provide information since the last report, or we give them the option to say the project has ended, that no further grants, publications, technologies are planned. And even just having this question going forward, I think will be nice, because then we can just say, we give them the opportunity to say the project is done and we can stop following up and stop asking for information. Next slide. So then on the ROI report form, which is identical for all 7 years, we ask them about any grants that were awarded, under review or not awarded, any publications, any abstracts, conference papers, or presentations, technologies or techniques, inventions, patent applications or licenses, any other products or technologies or things that were developed from this award, and then again, an optional file upload if they want to provide us anything else along the way. And all these, most of these questions were all developed based on the NIH progress reports and return on investment. So we got our ideas from, nothing more than that. Next question. Then you can set report reminders. So again, here's a screenshot. We opted to set 3 reminders because, of course, no one's going to do their reporting based on just 1 email. So we decided to set up 3 reminders for each of the progress reports. It's due in 1 month, 2 weeks, and it's due tomorrow. If they happen to submit it on the first day that it's due, great, we'll just go in and delete the reminders. Otherwise, it just has some text about if you've already submitted your report, thanks very much, and ignore the message. So I've gone ahead and set up 7 years of reports or reminders to be going out for all of these reports. And next slide. So looking forward, as we're coming up onto our first year end of award period, we're looking forward to these emails going out on July 1 and the investigators sending progress reports and return on investment. So we're looking forward to collecting, reviewing, reporting, and using this data that's collected, because I think that as part of the Research Development Office, certainly for faculty development and mentoring and so on, this will be a great thing to have this information. We're working on doing some historical data entry, and we're entering limited info from past competitions simply so we can collect some of those progress reports and return on investment that are still might be pending. We're thinking about using InfoReady Review for other competitions. We have symposium abstracts, internship program applications, T32 trainee tracking. There's any number of things that we could use this for. Anything that needs an application, a review, a decision, and follow-up would be perfect to set up in the system. And then more important even, we're looking forward to adding other microsites at the University of Minnesota and collaborating just within our institution among other grants administrators. And I think that's all. So, and our last slide, our contact information. We've got our email and phone number. Please, and don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions, or we look forward to hearing from you too about how you use the system. And I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Carlos for moderating the questions.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Liz. We do have some questions. Thanks for presenting how you manage that process. I think it was very helpful. So we have first question here asks, this is for you, Sue. How did you select reviewers for the study sections, and how do you reward and or incentivize participation by reviewers?
Well, how we select, again, we have a pool of people, mostly, again, internal from the University of Minnesota. By default, all of our cancer-centered leadership, executive board, scientific directors, program leaders are all part of the study section, and past awardees are part of the study section. And then we typically, and actually I'll talk a little bit and then defer to Liz for further comments, but typically we'll provide the list to the competition leader, and they will contact people to be on study section if they have expertise in that area. I mean, typically they're looking for someone with expertise in the area. We also, though, have to be conscious of conflict of interest. We have spouses among the faculty, so we have to make sure that we don't obviously get spouses reviewing each other's applications. And I think with that, I'll mute and let Liz comment. I'm not sure that we have any incentivization, et cetera.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, as far as incentives go, we haven't found it necessary to really have anything monetary involved with our review panels. What we've really tried to promote with them, first, the awardees, it's their obligation as the terms of their award. So that's kind of a nice built-in requirement that we have their participation. And as far as having other expertise and the leaders participate, we try to really highlight how their participation not only helps the Cancer Center, but it also helps them in preparing future grants and really having the inside view of what these review study sections look like and how people are evaluating their applications. So when they go to submit internal grants or other grants to NIH and other review boards, they have an idea of how these things get discussed and what kind of sticks out and what can make their application stronger. So we try to highlight that for them.
Thanks, Liz and Sue. There's a follow-up question. So it relates to the reviewers. So most of the reviewers are internal, but you mentioned approaching external reviewers. Can you tell us a little more about that process and when you employ that?
Sure, I can go ahead and speak to that. So, in the cases where we've had very large grants or pilots, or we are trying to kind of reach a real broad audience with our cross-departmental applications and pilot funds, we will seek external reviewers. Often we will tap people from an external advisory board for the Cancer Center, for other departments that are relevant. And really with InfoReady, it's been very simple to, we reach out to them individually by email, and once they agree, we just assign that to them in the system, and then they have found that it works very simple to follow the email instructions that are automatically generated from InfoReady to go ahead and set up a profile and submit their reviews. So it's been a very slick process and one that we've had some really great feedback about.
Thanks. Now, here is a question that relates to setting up your office. So your office is pretty new, and the question is, what was the process? How do you go about setting up the research development office at the Cancer Center?
Sure. So this was really something that I think came from a lot of discussion with other universities and other groups that were looking for ways to organize themselves around the kind of support and activities that are engaging their investigators and researchers, certainly through the group at NORDP and through NACIRA, some of these other professional groups. And what we decided was there was a lot of activities already happening at our Cancer Center that were activities that were defined as research development. Like we had our peer review program already operating, we had an internal grants program, we had some grant proposal support. And so really it just was a matter of bringing these things together into one division that was managing all these different processes, because then you really have a nice bird's eye view of what's going on to support the research at your university and at your at our center. So it really seemed like a lot of ways that these different activities were complementing each other already. So it's really just a matter of bringing them under one group with one manager and a team that really kind of had their hands in everything to be able to see where there can be a lot more collaboration, a lot more support given to certain areas of our research that that was really necessary to help move things forward. So it kind of happened organically in that we knew that these processes could be better managed if they were housed together.
Thank you. Here's a question about the progress report, and the person who asked the question would like to know what are the most important outcomes and metrics you're trying to obtain in the progress reports?
Well, I guess I would say, you know, we want to know, did they follow the aims that they stated in their proposal? What results did they get? And are they results that are going to be something that could lead to a grant? I mean, and or publication. I mean, those are important outcomes for their for the money. You know, was the money spent wisely? That, you know, is this a seed grant that will lead to more money that we could get from an external proposal? I guess those are the main things. I don't know, Liz, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think you really kind of caught all of it, Sue. And also, you know, for us with their progress reports, you know, I like how Sue breaks it down into those 3 different time periods, because we also, with that return on investment piece, like she mentioned, we're trying to see the money that we put into these grants, that they're going and helping to propel the research forward. And it does so by discoveries that result in publications where we're sharing that information, and also in new external fundings that will help to grow these projects from what's maybe started as a smaller project that was funded by our internal funds, and then something that grew into a real you know, discovery-driven project. So we're hoping just to capture some of that and be able to tell our stakeholders what kind of great outcomes that we've been seeing, and to tell the funders of, you know, these charities and other foundations and groups that give us these funds. We'd like to be able to go back to them and say definitively that these are some of the amazing outcomes that have really come from that small amount of funding. It's really grown into something more. And so these reports really help us to capture that.
I would just add to a couple of our competitions are specifically geared towards new collaborations, either between 2 investigators from different research programs or different, you know, 2 investigators from different departments. And so I think we're trying to foster and see if we can get more collaborative work, again, to leading to new science, new projects, you know, new things to help integrate and to move the science forward. So I think that's a good thing too, that we look for.
So, you know, you're touching on some areas that triggered a few similar questions, and they relate to sponsored program system. So what happens after you do all of this? What sponsored program system do you use at the Cancer Center?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question one more time?
What sort of sponsored program system do you use at the Cancer Center?
Oh, I think this is probably relating to like an to grants that are going like external, like how we are handling them internally. We have a central department that handles our sponsored projects, and currently we are looking at an interfacing system system-to-system approach for these, but we do not have one at the moment at our university. That is something that they're hoping to have installed in the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm not sure if that really answers the question, but maybe if there's some further clarifying things there, let me know.
If I have any other questions like that, I'll bring those up. So other similar questions. Someone asked, does the system integrate with Cayuse? So I'll take that one. So InfraReady Review, we actually have a project going on between Cayuse and another institution where we're creating a data feed between the two systems. So that's ongoing, and you know, we hope to make that into a standard integration that will be available at some point in the future. So Liz, Sue, I think some of the questions are more for the, you know, what sort of research administration tools are used at University of Minnesota, or systems to submit directly to funding organizations and to do, you know, budgets and proposal development and things like that.
Yeah, and that kind of gets to what I was saying, that currently our system, we just kind of have a homegrown system within the university, and that is, they are shopping around right now to find a better system-to-system approach. I know they are looking at Cayuse and some other similar platforms for that. So that is to be coming down the road. I do know that we look forward to being able to hopefully use InfraReady in partnership with some of these things down the road, but right now as a university we don't have that here.
Excellent. Here's a couple more questions. First, what is the average size of your pilot awards?
Most of the awards are, pilot awards are $25,000 to $50,000 range. We have a couple of multi-year awards where they get $100,000 over for each of 3 years, but most are, again, $25,000 to $50,000.
And there was another related question here. Does the university or the Cancer Center have any sort of grand challenge type of programs that they participate in and manage?
So we do have a larger mechanism right now, a larger pilot fund sort of thing that I think you could kind of classify as a grand challenge, where we have, I had a proposal go out last year, or RFA go out last year for applications that were very interdisciplinary and that were trying to put together really a whole center or team around a specific cancer type or cancer problem. And that award mechanism did receive a significantly larger amount. I'm blanking on the exact number, but I do believe it was like 500 or greater than that, 1,000, just to try and approach a grander challenge, I guess. That'd be my best. Unless Sue has another input on that.
No, I mean, nothing more to add. That was definitely a team science project, and I think they actually get $500,000 a year for 2 years or 3 years. But nothing more to add on that.
Okay, thank you. One more question here. How much overall time savings and productivity changes did you experience compared to your earlier manual processes?
Go ahead, Sue. I'll let Sue answer that because she really was part of the process
Well,
that we had before.
I mean, I'm trying to think of how to quantify. I mean, I would have a hard time, I'm sorry, coming up with an actual number. It's more on the ability to, I mean, the value to capture this information in one central database, to have consistent information, to have, you know, just automatic reminders and things like that. That would be the most value, and I think the hardest thing to quantify how useful and important that is. I'm sorry, I can't give you a better better answer as far as how much time it saved. Certainly, ease of work and organization is invaluable.
Thanks, Sue. We have one more question here. This person wrote in, I'm interested to hear best practices for your review process management.
Sure. I think, for us, it's just kind of keeping things streamlined and keeping track of kind of where you're at any given point throughout the process. So I think that InfoReady has really helped us in, really, you kind of can go to one place and always see like who have I already assigned, who is already in doing their reviews, which ones are still pending, who I need to follow up with. Because it's all right in one system, whereas before you'd have to be searching through your emails, your inbox, to try and track down, who contacted me last and did they send me what I needed. So that's been a really great practice for us, is having that in InfoReady. And I think as long as you kind of set out clearly, before the reviews begin, like what your expectations are, what questions you really want them to ask, and then kind of practice through it a couple of times yourself as well. We did some test runs, setting ourselves up as reviewers in some mock application processes in InfoReady that helped us to understand what the reviewers would be seeing and what their process might look like, so that when they ask us questions, we're better able to assist them with any sort of, as they're learning the InfoReady system and as they're kind of navigating, we help them to know what's going on, because as an administrator, you have a very different view than as a reviewer. So that was helpful for us to kind of test that out and pilot it ourselves. So I think that that's been really helpful.
Thank you, Liz. Much appreciated. Now, we've reached the end of our time today. Thank you, everyone, for your time spent with us, and a very special thank you to our panelists, Liz and Sue from the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota. As a reminder, the session today was recorded and will be posted to our website next week. There's also that post-webinar survey, if you could be so kind as to fill that out. If you have any additional questions that come to mind, either about our panelists' processes or about InfoReady, please feel free to email us. Our contact information is on the screen here, and we're also glad to share the panelists' contact info as well if you didn't jot it down on the screen. Thanks again to our panelists, and everyone have a great day.